Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about some of the major challenges facing humanity in the 21st century and how we might deal with those challenges. My guest is the well-known futurist, David Brin. David is an astrophysicist with a PhD in space science who serves on an advisory board to NASA. He's also a best-selling science fiction writer whose books have won numerous awards, and one of his novels, The Postman, was made into a movie starring Kevin Costner. He's also a nonfiction author whose recent works deal with the increasing surveillance in our society, the increasing difficulty of concealing secrets, and the possible consequences of that. He's also a popular speaker and consultant on a wide range of issues pertaining to technology and the future. David, great to have you on the program today.
It's great to be with you, Marty, and on a show that goes out to the brainiest part of America.
That's what we like to think. Anyway, before we start, we're sitting in front of kind of an interesting picture here, which was provided by you. Maybe you can give us a description of what we're looking at here.
Well, Marty, this is a scene, the very first scene from my novel Existence, portrayed by the great Bay Area artist Patrick Farley. And it's the scene in which an astronaut is in low Earth orbit, using technologies that are already under development to control a tether 1,000 miles away that's cleaning up space debris so that it won't cause the disasters like we saw in the movie Gravity. Only in this case, he snags something that's not debris and it's not human-made. And hence commences one of the more unusual alien first contact stories, which is just one part of a novel that's actually about us in the 30-year time frame.
And we might see a couple more pictures from that trailer on here during the show, but actually we have the entire trailer. We're going to look at the entire trailer, and then we'll talk about the implications of it. So let's go ahead and roll that tape. So that was the video from the book Existence, and I have to say that was a very impressive video. Congratulations on that. Is there any specific underlying message, some philosophical idea that you'd like to bring out regarding that book?
Well, it regards what you were talking about at the very introduction, Marty, and that is, what are some of the challenges we face, and are we capable of dealing with them? There's a context for all of this, and that is called the Fermi Paradox, and that's the question of why we've seen no sign of extraterrestrials when every single year we discover that it seems more likely that the universe is filled with life. 20 years ago, we knew of no planets outside our solar system. Now we know of thousands. And just a month ago, it was announced that a fairly nearby star has 7 Earth-sized planets in orbit, several of them orbiting in their Goldilocks zone, the continuously habitable zone.
Not too hot, not too cold.
That's right. And so the notion is, what could be thwarting other civilizations out there? Could they all stumble into some trap? And could we be stumbling into these traps?
Self-destruct before they leave their planet?
For example, Carl Sagan, 20, 30, 40 years ago, was talking about nuclear winter. Oppenheimer was talking, and all of us were afraid of, especially in the boomer generation, nuclear war. Well, we've proved that we're not totally stupid. We don't know that other aliens avoided nuclear war, but we do know that it's possible. We spent 70 years after our fingers were burned with the first nuclear weapons, not using them. And this is the first time in the history of our species that we chose to turn away from a cliff. We did it again with the ozone hole. We did it again when our rivers were on fire from pollution. And now you can draw edible fish out of the river near Pittsburgh. When I grew up, it hurt to breathe in LA. And now there's pollution. There are things to solve. There's global climate change and all of those things. But we've proved we're a people who are capable. And ironically, that puts a burden on us.
Well, is it a scientific issue, like we just need the proper technology? Or is it something in human nature itself that poses the biggest challenge?
Oh, there's no question that human nature is challenging. We are both capable of incredible, sagacious problem solving. And the answer is to move forward, because moving back to the way we were in 99% of human cultures, feudalistic societies that repressed advances in technology and ability and rights and freedom, that's been tried. That is no solution.
Well, one of the big problems is the fact that there are many people in the world who just seem to have a real problem coexisting peacefully with one another, and there's a drive to dominate. I want to be the guy on top, not the guy on the bottom.
And that's definitely a problem. But one of the things we do when we criticize ourselves and our society is, it's totally right, self-criticism, self-flagellation. We're trained to do that by Hollywood. The principal message in every Hollywood film is suspicion of authority, followed by tolerance and diversity, followed by appreciation of eccentricity. You can hardly find a Hollywood film that doesn't push those. We all think we invented suspicion of authority. We all think we invented the urge to criticize our own culture. We never stop to notice that we're the first culture that has taught all of our children, criticize your own culture. That was not the tradition for 6,000 years. It was obey your culture, think your culture is the only great thing. It's great the way it is. This reflex to criticize is ironically our only hope, because only by poking sticks in the ground in front of us as we're charging into the future will we find the landmines and the quicksand pits and the snake pits and the punji stakes that await the unwary. And that's why we discovered climate change. That's why we cured the ozone hole.
Is it a matter of finding the proper model of governance, a model of governance in which the rulers care more about the well-being of the world at large, as opposed to just their own personal careers?
Yes, but we can't count on that. For 6,000 years, 99% of human cultures were feudalistic. And that's the natural human attractor state. If left to themselves, elites of any kind, government, corporate, especially wealth, will rationalize that a pyramidal social structure, feudalistic, is in the best interests of everyone because they're so smart. The genius of our system is that we don't count on any particular group of leaders. Just yesterday, it was announced that the CIA, a leak of all their methodologies, of a lot of their methodologies, of trying to protect us from above. In the long run, what we have to do is what's illustrated here in a street scene from existence, is become a people who on our own can see, that we can see what's going on around us. We can hold accountable those who would invade our privacy, those who would abuse us.
Does that involve a cultural change? Do people have to make a decision that they have to look at the world in a different way? Because any philosophy that requires that all people act in a certain way is kind of defeated before it starts.
Yes, but the nice thing about this is we've already dealt with it for the last 200 years. No group, no solution has to include everybody. As long as we're free enough to argue and debate and negotiate, then some minority can point to this error and yell, and some other minority can point to that error and yell. The one thing that stands in the way of this working is the endemic problem in America of our recurring national fever, which is called the Civil War. And we're right now in phase 8 of the American Civil War.
Well, is it possible for people to compromise all their differences and come to common ground?
Absolutely.
Or some differences so great that both sides are willing to fight? Like if there's something you're willing to fight for, there's somebody else willing to fight against it.
Yes, both are true, but we had a system in America called politics. And that was where if you had a substantial majority who want something passionately, they don't want something else, but they don't dislike it as passionately. It's what the other side wants. You dicker, you trade, you negotiate. Politics in the United States, it's not so much left and right. It's the fact that politics has been deliberately destroyed. And that is something that happens every time we go into one of the phases of our Civil War. And when that phase of the Civil War is over, we shrug it off and we get back to merely yelling at each other, merely arguing, merely negotiating. And some of the people in the audience right now can remember when it was like that, when right and left merely shouted at each other but tried to find common ground.
Well, sometimes there's a concept of a pendulum that swings one way and then the other, but the amplitude of the pendulum grows each time until it goes over the edge?
Well, that is a mythology that's being spread by Steve Bannon and a bunch of others called the fourth turning. And that is that every 80 years there's a mega crisis in American life, the Revolution, the Civil War, World War II, and that we're about to have another one, and a hero generation restores America. It's pattern seeking, pattern recognition. You can do anything with patterns, and all I can say is that every cyclical mythology about human history or American history is complete garbage, utterly disproved by the facts.
Now, technology has really been a game changer as far as living in a surveillance society, for example. You've written a lot on this, the surveillance state. In fact, one of your many books is right here on the table, Chasing, maybe you can hold it up to that camera over there. So the idea is that you can't keep secrets anymore. And should we say, well, we don't need secrets because secrets are unnecessary? Or should we say, well, we have a right to be private and it's nobody's business what we're doing?
Well, it's very easy to say that, but we're living in an era of Moore's law, not only of computers, but of cameras. Every year the cameras get smaller, faster, cheaper, more mobile, vastly more numerous. And what we have to do is find a way to preserve freedom and, yes, some privacy that rides along with this technology instead of standing with your hand out screaming stop at a tsunami. It's much better to learn to surf a tsunami. You have a chance then. And the way to do that is to recognize that light is going to flood everywhere. And light is actually mostly our friend. All of our enemies, criminal gangs, tyrannical dictatorships, all secretive corporations, they all wither under light, or at least their bad schemes do. But not the American experience, not the West. What happens when light pours on us inconveniently is we're irritated, like the CIA leak just now. It's not going to really set us back very hard. We'll have to reconfigure, we'll have to rejudge our rules, we'll have to hold the mighty, government, corporations, we'll have to hold them more accountable. And that's the point of my book, The Transparent Society. And of course, in Chasing Shadows, what we have is an anthology of science fiction stories and essays by some of the greats in science fiction, Neil Stephenson, William Gibson, Vernor Vinge, James Gunn, Gregory Benford, stories that are set in a future in which light is spreading and people, Americans, Europeans, Westerners, but people all over the globe, find a way to adapt to this new world and even have some privacy.
So would you say that you're basically optimistic that even though we have a lot of problems, we'll be smart enough to figure them out without causing too much damage in the meantime?
Look, we've spent 70 years doing what was thought impossible, and that is avoiding nuclear war. We've done many impossible things. We saved the ozone layer. We've shown that we can save many endangered species. Nobody in 1980 would have predicted that by 2017, all species of whales would still exist. But all of them are still alive. May change next year. We may have mushroom clouds and nuclear war next year. But what we've proved is that we're a mighty people.
Let me ask you this. There are a lot of technologies which people are very concerned about today. One of them is artificial intelligence. Some leading technologists have branded it as a serious threat that could get out of control. What do you see as the future of artificial intelligence? Will it remain our servant or become our master?
Well, this is one of a dozen very problematical things. A dozen problematical things. And what we need to do is do as much as possible in the open. If you look at Michael Crichton's stories, the novels and the movies, they seem to be saying, and man should not pick up God's tools and try to be creative. That's not actually the lesson. Because the failure mode in almost all of these stories is when the impudent, opportunistic innovator that he's criticizing did it all in secret. Because almost all of the failure modes that he shows in his stories wouldn't have happened if the innovator had simply done it in the open, subject to the magic of criticism.
Well, even if it's open, do we want people to become dependent on machines to tell them what to do?
Very, very good question. Look, we're going to be creating new forms of life that are smarter than us. Guess what? We do that every human generation. They're called our children. If we can create AI in a way that they smoothly move in as humans, as members of our civilization, loyal to us, though perhaps a little incomprehensible, like our children often are. But they share our general values, and there's one way to do that, and that's to have lots of them and have them hold each other accountable. Because if we just have a few, they're going to be lords, they're going to be kings, they're going to be priests. We have to go with what brought us to the party, and what brought us to this party is diversity, eccentricity, appreciation of difference. I may sound a little lefty when I say all that stuff, but it's really underpins our capitalist creativity.
Yeah, do you think there's any hubris involved when people say, we're going to develop machines that are smarter than humans, they'll replace humans, we're going to build a machine that can do your job better, faster, and cheaper than you can, so we don't need you anymore, you have no role to play in the economy.
Well, I expect to be replaced by my children. I expect to be replaced by somebody else's even smarter, better, even better than me as a science fiction author, as hard as that is to comprehend. The point is that what I care about is this incredible experiment that we've gone in for just a couple hundred years that has enabled us to escape from the trap of feudalism, which has probably trapped a lot of alien races, explaining why they haven't filled the galaxy. If we can keep this renaissance of good-natured, jovial, humorous, self-critical, reciprocally critical, fun civilization, then if we're replaced to some degree in our jobs, then they'll give us universal income and they'll pat us on the head and they'll let us be retired and proud of them. Look, that isn't without its problems. I don't want to be forced into retirement. But you know what? There are worse things.
Now, there is a theory that society will be so productive that we'll be able to pay people for doing nothing. But is that really viable? Are all those people doing nothing going to devote their time to creating poetry and literature and art? Or they're going to say, I have nothing to do today, so I'll start drinking at breakfast time? And
very good question, an excellent question, Marty, and I don't know the answer. I do see that we are very diverse, and that given an opportunity to have leisure time, what a lot of Americans and Westerners did was they spread themselves out to hobbies. You see, this has already happened. The 40-hour work week was already a huge boon of free time. And what have we got today? We have got more hobbies, more amateur scientists, more engaged in real science, more amateurs this, amateur that. You know, there are more sword makers today in the United States of America than there were at any point in the Middle Ages in Europe. There are more blacksmiths than there were in the Wild West. Now, I'm not saying everybody's doing this. Some become lotus eaters. Some become, addicts and things like that. But the fraction of us who have already faced this dilemma and have chosen to become good at something and good at something else is much, much larger than cynics would say. It's already been tested. 100 years ago, John Kenneth Galbraith predicted that by 1935, we'd have the 20-hour work week. He was wrong. We needed to work hard to get across the 20th century. But the fact is that maybe now it's going to come true.
Now, we do live in a very advanced part of the world. There's a very large segment of mankind who have never known anything but war and starvation their entire lives. Can we continue to live in our very nice bubble while hundreds of millions or more people are starving? Do we have to bring them along with us or just shut them out and say, you stay on your side and we'll stay on our side?
Compassion and the expansion of our horizons is a very, very powerful force in the West. And we have to recognize that whenever the fear level goes down, our horizons go out. And in our mythology, these are horizons of fear, typified in Hollywood by our bad aliens, horizons of exogamy, pretty aliens we'd like to mate with, horizons of opportunity. And science fiction is a reflection of the fact that we in the West, and now in many other parts of the world, have had low fear levels long enough that we extend out our horizons of inclusion, for example, who we include as not only members of the tribe to be protected, but members of the council. And now it includes women, minorities, and all of that. That is, if you're a member of the portion of our civilization that's satiable, that's able to have low fear levels. And they have found that fear level is very correlated with politics.
Now, you said that we went for 70 years without nuclear war. That's not really that long a time.
It's a human lifespan.
Right. But more nations have nuclear weapons now than did then. And nations seem to be just as angry at each other. The level of anger in the world doesn't seem to be diminished since 1945.
As Franklin Roosevelt, the hero of the greatest generation, when was America great? They say the 40s and 50s. Well, the greatest generation of that era, their hero was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And fear is terrifying. Fear is the mind killer, as a great science fiction author, Frank Herbert, said. And it is our enemy, and it is being stirred deliberately by many forces who want this phase of our civil war. But let me point out that there are some people who are pointing out that there's a lot of good news. Peter Diamandis, in his book Abundance, the book The Better Angels of Our Nature, these point out that for every piece of bad news, there's spectacular good news. 3/4 of the world's children today bring school books home to apartments that are very basic, but there's electricity, potable water, a flush toilet, and a fridge that has food, and they're going to school. The ratio has never been higher. And do you know what actually caused it to happen? Americans buying trillions of dollars worth of crap we never needed. The American trade deficit was the greatest force for good in the history of the planet. It's what we'll be remembered for, which is why all this panic over,
Except it drove us close to bankruptcy.
Well, no, but you see, we've paid for the American trade deficit for 70 years. How? By inventing new stuff. Jets, telecom, rockets, satellites, the internet, pharma. And we profited enough from them to pay for the trade deficit, which then got all those kids into school. The problem is that now all of our inventions are being stolen from us before we get a chance to benefit from them. The people who are doing this, and I could name names, are killing the goose that laid their golden eggs.
I have a ton more questions I'd love to ask you, and I feel we're just getting started here, but we are going to have to wrap because we are out of time. I've been speaking with David Brin, a well-known astrophysicist, futurist, science fiction author. Great having you on the program today. Maybe you'll come back again and we'll talk about the issues some more.
I'd like it very much, here in the home of the future.
And thank you for watching. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. For Future Talk, I'm Marty Wasserman, and we'll see you next time.